What's good, people? Izzy Max here. This is a different video. Instead of doing the normal weekly breakdowns, we do kind of a mid-season PR. This one is going to be all the coaches in the league. The next PR we're going to do is towards the latter half of the season. And that is where it'll just be the two separate commentators just talking about interdivision stuff and talking more playoffs. But this is just kind of the way the season's breaking down so far. Usually we do this at week 3, but because of the season format, we went ahead and did it in week 4. But without further ado, I am joined by Dan.
What's going on?
Joined by Ryan.
Hello.
And joined by Matt.
Heyo.
So, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this. And leading off, we are going to have Burst. I'm going to explain kind of how these work. So, at the top, you're going to see their name, the win-loss record, their differential, and the overall ranking that the 4 of us commentators gave. It's an average out of 4. You're going to see the actual games, their transactions, their kind of signature mon, and then their whole team breakdown that you can find on our doc. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Okay, so at the bottom here, over the past couple of days, we were kind of debating over three different coaches to see who was going to be placed where in the bottom 3, and after some deliberation, it became rather obvious that Burst was going to be in our number 16 slot here. He was voted unanimously to be in the bottom slot. He is 1-3 with a differential of -7. On the I believe we have a mistake on the matches there. The 4th one should be Hector, not Gumi. In any case, Burst has been. Okay.
There's no mistakes. We're perfect. Everything will be fine at all times.
All right. So
anyway,
to say that Burst has had a rough start to the season is a pretty serious understatement. I'll start with the win that he picked up. He was going up against Tay, who also has not had the greatest start in these first 4 weeks. Spoiler alert: Tay is also one of the coaches we were discussing for bottom 3 slots. That was, I don't want to say a free win for Burst, but it was almost free. All he had to do was throw out Glastrier and let it do Ice Horse things, because it's an insanely strong Pokemon, obviously, and Tay happened to have a pretty terrible matchup against it, so that's kind of all he had to do. Unfortunately, we've seen some other instances where identifying what kind of matchup his tier 1s are going to have is not something that he's always been able to do, which is why we see this beautiful label over the Ice Horse here. That was most evident, I think, in this last match against Hector, which, I mean, if you look at the 2 teams on paper, Hector had a tremendous weakness against Glastrier. It looked like there was a lot of sweeping potential as long as you can just set up Trick Room and tech some stuff for the Blastoise. Like, Glastrier was going to have a field day, and he didn't even bring it to the match at all. Was not in his team of 6, which was a pretty insane mistake to make. We can also look at the Razz Match. Again, kind of not exactly the same mistake, but he kind of whiffed on tier 1s again in this match, not really having much of a plan at all for Razz's most obvious mode, which was that Tornadus Metagross. He kind of just threw out a Snorlax and Dynamaxed it without even belly drumming, and it didn't really do anything, and that ended up being kind of a free win for Razz. The Toxic game I don't really remember too much about. Somebody else wants to fill in the gaps there, feel free. But it's just we Maxwell said before we started recording that it seems like Burst is kind of regressing, and I really agree with that. He's been making some really crucial fundamental mistakes. I'm surprised that this needs to be said at this point in the league's history, but like understanding your tier ones matchups is rather important. Your tier ones and the opponent's tier ones is actually rather important, and there were at least 2 weeks here where Burst just completely whiffed on that. And we've seen some pretty crucial mistakes from him in the past. There have been some times when he seemed to be improving, but it's hard to tell if that's improvement or inconsistency. I don't know, but it's surprising that we're seeing these kinds of big mistakes from him here this late in the league's history. So that's what I've got. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so also, we're not holding back on anybody. We're going to shit on a lot of people and praise a lot of people. But I fully agree. And the game against Toxic, he tried doing the slow horse, kind of like
Yes.
Yeah, we seen success with when Dan did it, but this was not the game to do it. Granted, he had a god-awful matchup into Toxic.
Yeah, he did.
But
I'm not putting a ton into that game.
No, but into more of my thing, other than the Glacier transaction, I think they're all kind of just bad. The Glacier, of course, it's a freaking Glacier, and your 2 tier 1s were weak to ice. So Glacier is just a solid 100% upgrade. Where I fall into a problem, and I think it might be the way the team is constructed, none of these transactions feel impactful. You know, you're dropping Snorlax for Ferrothorn. Well, your main Trick Room option is weak to both fighting and fire. So they're not really coming in the same match. Granted, they do similar, they're different things, but weakness-wise, you're teching the same options. Hitmonlee to Mienshao just kind of felt linear. And the Caparaja for Rotom, I feel like there's better, there were better things on the board. Before we recorded, I mentioned Reuniclus as a secondary Trick Room setter and sweeper that isn't weak to steel, which will also be teched when they play you. But other than that, I'm not going to step on Dan's toes, which I'm going to throw it to next. But that's really all I got. Dan, why don't you talk about the kill ratios here?
Yeah, so this is something that I noticed that's a bit of an issue with this team in particular. So if you look at his kills, Glastrier has 10. It's leading the team. That's to be expected with it, even if it was a transaction that wasn't available for week 1. But nothing else on his team has more than 1 kill. That means his Rain Mode and Landorus, they combine for 3 kills, Rain Mode and Landorus, which are basically his entire fast modes. And the week he didn't bring Glastrier into Hector, you'll notice that no other Pokemon on his team, like I said, has more than 1 kill. To win in any given week, you need to get 8 kills, maybe 7 if there's Life Orb kills or something on the other team. But the point is, with 6 Pokemon, at least one thing needs to get 2 kills to win a week. So he is the most centralized in terms of kills. It's all Glastrier or bust. And not bringing Glastrier into Hector just seems like the sort of monumental, like, prep inaccuracy that has occurred this week, which is why I personally rated him 16th. Like that, it was just the prep decisions. I do like the Rotom Fan trade more than you do. I will give him that. I dropped Rotom Fan, but I think it's great in the format for the value. And Kuparaja wasn't really doing much of anything on his team, but
real quick,
yeah,
eight of those 10 came from Tay.
Yeah, it's rough. There's some rough spots here, definitely.
I will say one thing to be fair about his transactions is that he's kind of just he seems to be getting rid of stuff that wasn't as useful once he did the Rillaboom for Glastrier trade. You can understand with Glastrier on the team, Snorlax and Caparaja filling similar roles, especially the Caparaja just being kind of redundant. You want to diversify a little bit more rather than having 2 things that like pretty much do the same thing. And then the Hitmonlee for Mienshao, obviously Hitmonlee was much more useful when you have terrain. So you just have, I think that was an upgrade. You just have a better fighting type that's not relying on burden. So I think those are fair. A lot of these trades, like nothing. Trades 2 through 4. I don't find anything particularly impressive about what he picked up. But
I was about to say, yeah, that was my point. I think there was better options than what he picked up.
Sure, yeah, but I think dropping what he dropped makes sense. I think dropping the Kaparaja should have happened much earlier.
Agreed.
Pretty much immediately after the Glacier transaction. Just to be fair, I think that part needed to be said.
Agreed. Yeah. I wasn't saying like the transactions themselves, like as a whole, were bad. I think he just could have picked up better stuff. Ryan, anything else?
Yeah, to me, I rated Burst 16th because I looked at his games, and he is losing or winning before he plays his match. And that's not good. Like, if you're playing someone like Razz, where the obvious best thing into your team is Metagross go Burr with Torn, and you don't have a lead flowcharted for that, if you're playing Hector and you don't say, wow, my Glastrier really handles most of Hector's team, let's tech around Blastoise and win. Like, if you're not doing those kind of things, your opponent just wins or loses. You just win or lose off the bat. Tay lost because he had a bad matchup into Glastrier. But every game here is a 2. He's not played to 3 yet, which I think is extremely notable. I think that is actually something we see with a lot of the bottom coaches here, is that basically none of them are playing to 3, which means that their matches are that polarized. So there's something going on in the prep here where Burst is not prepping his team correctly into the matchups that he's having, and he is essentially allowing his opponents to do what they feel like, more or less. I mean, your plan goes off into Burst right now. He needs to really turn around. I think the prep is the big thing. The team isn't amazing, but it's getting... I like the current state it's in better than the initial state by a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike the transactions that much. I think he really just needs to, like, step up his prep a lot. Like, that's really why I put him in 16.
Yep. And before... Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Sure, yeah, I was just going to say, I definitely agree that the prep is the problem, and I wanted to highlight a couple other things about that match with Hector. That I forgot to mention earlier. He seemed to, in his post-commentary, he seemed to be leading pretty much just to counter, like, follow me with Darmanitan stuff, and it was not obvious to me at all that his lead was like covering for other things, which I think that's a pretty fundamental mistake to make when you're just predicting, oh, I think my opponent's going to do this, so I'm just going to hard counter it. That's a pretty terrible idea in draft. You need to have a plan that covers for as many things as possible that your opponent can do.
Right, especially since Hector only did that week 1 and hasn't done it since.
Right.
If it was happening every week, sure.
Or make something that covers multiple things.
Yeah.
Your leads are not, whenever you're leading a game, you can typically come up with something that handles, not every lead, obviously, but can handle 2 or 3 of the common ones that you think might happen,
Mm-hmm.
And you also need to be able to identify when you have a good mode that really just goes in. Like Ryan, you said, do the Glastrier stuff and text a few things for Blastoise, because I believe he did cite Blastoise as like the main reason that he wasn't going with Glastrier stuff.
Just text stuff.
That's always going to happen when you have like something with a really good matchup. There's always going to be at least that one thing that you don't kill very easily, and that's fine. Like, you still have an amazing matchup into the rest of the team, I looked at the team or the matchup for all of 30 seconds, and I could have thrown together Magmar Aromatisse lead with like Misty Terrain on Aromatisse for Blastoise's Yawn, maybe tech an energy ball on it to hit it, put gyro ball on the aromatisse to proc the Glastier's weakness policy. Maybe you get intimidated, but whatever, you're still +1. The Intimidator is weak to ice, and you can still. And then the last slot on aromatisse is Trick Room, and then you just blow through the Blastoise if you need to, set up terrain for Yawn, whatever. Like, that seems like it's difficult for Hector to counter that, I think. And that just seemed like such an obvious. Not all of the techs were extremely obvious, but I think the mode itself just seemed like such an extremely obvious thing to do.
Fair. One quick thing, we put this on before I updated this. I missed a forfeit loss. These don't all count as forfeits. This is like transaction drops as well. So this should be 4 and this is at -6. But moving on to our next one, we're gonna have Dark, who is 14-15 because he did end up tying with Tay with a 14.5. But Ryan, why don't you go ahead and take this one?
Yeah, sure. So Dark had a very, very convincing, solid game into Dina. He lost -3, but it was a solid set. Got a forfeit win over Toxic, and then into Maxwell, he got beat with 0-2, -4, and then into Gumi, it was also -4. He's had one transaction, which is the shed for the Squirtle, which I think is a great transaction. No complaints. And his main offensive Emon has been Vintini. Part of the reason Dark is hanging here, and part of the reason we argued about where to put him, is that it is arguable whether he would have gotten the win over Toxic had it not been for the forfeit, especially with how well some of Toxic's season has been going. We'll get to that later. But there is... his game with Dina is really the only like great game, and into Maxwell and Gumi, while we don't have a replay of him v Gumi, we have enough information from the both of them to know that it was a pretty like easy, solid win on Gumi's end. So it's just hard to say. Like, we have a lot of coaches that are 1-3, but his only win comes from a forfeit. He has one really good game and then 2 games where things just went really badly, like 0-2 really bad losses. So it's a little difficult to say how his season will kind of go from here. Dark always tends to surprise me, personally speaking, but this is kind of a really weird picture. He could have been last, and at one point I actually had him last because I thought if not for the forfeit win, it would be 0-4. And ultimately, I decided to bump him out of there, but because the Dina game was good. But he's got a... if the trend from his last 2 continues, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, I agree. I was as well kind of teetering between putting him last or not. But again, kind of the game into Dina is really sealing it. And you might look like, oh, that's only a -3. He won a game, but the loss to me is only a -4. My team, you're gonna kill Mons if you face me. I have follow me's and I have support Mons that are meant to die. And then the game against Gumi, kind of the same thing. Gumi has some support Mons that are meant to die, and that's the kind of the kills that he was only able to get. One problem I have, and I think it's the construction of his team, which is why I was able to run fast Melmetal. Victini is as fast as Mon, outside of the Unburdened Slurpuff, and prepping for speed tiers that don't go above 100 is honestly easy. Just counter the Trick Room, which is his Pincurchin Fungus Goal Lurk, and you're gonna be fine with your speed tiers. And I think that's kind of where he's falling a little bit. Also, I don't think he's utilizing some of the Mons. Gudra had its first appearance against Gumi, and it only went 1-1, while looking incredibly good into Gumi, in my eyes at least. And other than that, yeah, we're not sure if he would even have a win if it wasn't for the forfeit. But there's really not much to say. I know he kind of stayed on Burst for a while, but when it comes to Dark, like, his win came from a forfeit. Yeah, we just
don't know much. Like,
yeah, outside of his really good game against Dina, and you can say, yeah, well, Burst had a really good game into Tay. Tay has no answer to Glastrier.
And is also at the bottom here. And
yes, he's also
top,
tied at 14-15. So yeah, people in our Discord might have some arguments about this, but when you don't have an actual win, we do weigh forfeits evenly across the board. It's really hard to put you higher. And seeing some of the play you've had outside of that one really good game against Dina, it's just kind of hard. And I think some of that actually has to do with the construction of the team and the speed tiers. That's really all I got to say, which is kind of sad. I wish I had more, but
yeah, it's hard to say much when, like Ryan said, we just don't have a lot of info. I was about to say I really wish we got to see the game against Gumi, because we already have we missed a game from him in week 2 already, so we only have 2 games to go off of, when for most of everybody else we have 4. It's just a little bit weird. Like I didn't really know where I wanted to play Stark either, but I personally didn't want to put him last. I actually had him rated at 14 just because I felt like Burst and Tay had shit the bed harder. Yeah, it's hard to know what to do with him. I also agree, team wise, he needs to make some transactions to bolster that fast mode. Get a fast tailwind setter, something like Noivern. The Shedinja Squirtle is good, but it's not enough. That's about all I've got. Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, I don't have too much. Dark has faced one of the toughest schedules in the league so far, which is a point that is in his favor. I weighed strength of schedule a lot more than the other 3 did, but yeah, there's not a lot of info in terms of gameplay to watch, so we can only look at the numbers, and the numbers are a little suboptimal at this point.
Fair. I think we can move on to Tay. I'll go ahead and take this one first. Tay, you're going to look and be, oh, negative 14. Holy shit. Why is he not last? Well, Tay, unlike the other 2 coaches in last, which is something I took a little bit, he took a whole year off. So he was rusty for the first 2 games. Jess is no slouch. Burst, he had a terrible matchup into. And then he beat Anthony, which is going to be one of our top coaches, which is a really good game. 2-0, not even to 3. Other than a crit, I felt like he was very dominant in that game. And then he lost to me. But other than that, Tay's just kind of been middle of the road. Like I said, other than Dark, I think Tay has had one of the harder schedules. Aside from Burst, but with that terrible matchup, I think it does go a little more in his favor. His transactions, I think, are great. He dropped Tangrowth for Serena. Those are flipped. He already has Volcarona, so Tangrowth really didn't do anything, and he wanted some more offense and some more just bullshit deniers. So he felt like Serena was good, and I kind of agree. And then the Hawlucha was really kind of a star pickup in my eyes, which really led to his game into Anthony being so good. I feel like he's been playing just kind of okay for someone who is rusty, took a whole year off. I do feel like that rust is starting to kind of come off. In the match against me, if you watched it, he was really in a good chance to win game 2. He played it really well, had a very bulky Beware that he kind of took my answers away from early. So he's not playing terrible, but you can definitely tell he's rusty. And based on the differential, there was just no way any of us honestly could put him higher. But what do you guys have to say? We'll go ahead and throw it to Dan.
Yeah, I think Tay's play belies his record so far. Like, I think he was competitive against Jess. I just think Jess had a bit of a better team than him. I think Burst just had a phenomenal team matchup into him, and you had a better team than him. But I think he played well in each of those games, and his prep was decent as well. So I think for Tay, the biggest thing holding him back is the team overall, and maybe a bit of the Jirachi utilization as well, because his kills are really focused into that Feeny and Beware right now. But I think watching him play, if you get into a softer portion of his schedule, I think you could see Tay, get to a 4-4 record pretty easily and maybe be fighting for one of those wildcard spots. So even though he's got the worst differential in the league right now, I don't think by any means is he out of the conversation for making postseason.
No, absolutely not. I agree with that 100%. And I guess I'll talk.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say here. I think Tay has also done a nice job utilizing some of those mons like Beware and a few of his some of the lesser picks, lesser used mons. I really like the Hawlucha trade. I very adamantly did not like Blissey on his team, and I'm so glad to see Hawlucha so much better, so good. Loved that. But yeah, I mean, I think Tay can turn his season around. I felt pretty comfortable putting him here. Personally, I rated him 14 because I felt like his capacity to have a better schedule later, and he has, I think, the biggest upset win in the whole league with his 2-0 over Anthony, which is pretty significant. So I have my fingers crossed. So best of luck to him. But yeah, negative 14 diff's kind of rough. When you're fighting for that wild card, part of the thing that's going to have to happen is that if you can pull some good wins, they're going to have to be pretty big mon wins. You can't skate by with the 1-2 +1 or +2. You're going to actually have to get those. Some night, a couple of nice 2-0 +4, 2-0 +6 or 7 or whatever. So that's hard, but I think that the other people who will be competing for the wild card slot will have a potential differential advantage on you. So you got to just be really careful about that.
Also, real quick, his next game is Dark, so that will be the tiebreaker for 14-15.
That is literally the tiebreaker. There's another one of those coming up in the 2-2 coaches too.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to these next couple of matches for Tay. It's excuse me. It definitely seems like in the beginning, his prep was just really not there, and there's a variety of reasons for that in the first couple of weeks. I feel like the game against Anthony was really the one time I thought in these first 4 weeks where his prep was actually there and he was actually playing well. The other games, especially the first two games, it was hard for me to discern what exactly he was trying to do or what exactly his plan was. His prep was really not there. It seemed like at some points he was kind of just tossing mons on the field and just clicking buttons. I didn't really...
he gave up against Burst, straight up.
Right, and that's unfortunate. I don't think... anybody with a history of playing this game knows that you never give up. But I know that there were some strange circumstances with the game against Jess where he had lost his team, but I also felt like again it felt like he gave up before he even started, because he still had that water gun on Blissey, which was supposed to be for the weakness policy Volcarona, and he just seemed to kind of haphazardly throw shit together and didn't even put a weakness policy on the Volcarona, and still had was still leading with the water gun stuff.
Yeah, that's what 5 minutes before a game looks like.
Even 5 minutes before a game, that's no excuse.
I know.
Yeah, that was exceedingly bad. And even his game against you, it seemed like there was more of a plan, but I was not impressed at all. I mean, especially clicking the Aqua Jet in front of Electivire. If somebody else clicks something like that in front of Follow Me Electivire for a third time now, I'm gonna delete the whole doc and burn the server down.
I almost maxed the Electivire.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess maybe he would have looked like a genius if you did, but we'll get to this when we get to you. But newsflash, Electivire gets Follow Me.
Yee.
Yeah, I just haven't really been. I haven't been impressed with Tay yet, and I'm hoping that
outside of
easier
Anthony.
matchups. Sure, yeah, that's like I said. That's the one time I felt like he actually he brought his A game and he did well. So I'm looking, and it seems like there's maybe he's turning a corner at this point. Maybe he's gonna bring the heat, which is good because he's got some more winnable matches coming up. So I'm hoping that he improves. It looks like there's a possibility that he might, and like you guys said, even with this, even though his differential's in the toilet right now, um, if he gets some good wins, there's a possibility that he can get back up into one of those wild card slots. I'd like to see that happen. So look,
sure.
I'm optimistic. We'll see.
For sure. Moving on next, Dan. Why don't you go ahead and take Johnny?
Yeah, absolutely. So Johnny's had a pretty interesting season. He lost 0-2 to Gumi and to Charles, then beat Noah 2-0, and then lost 1-2 to Razz. So he has played only coaches who are 2-2 right now, and has gone 1-3 against them. I think he's played overall pretty well. Into Charles, he definitely had some issues with his speed tiers that he corrected for Noah. And then into Razz, his matchup wasn't the greatest, but that was a really fun set to watch as well. Johnny's team has been overall fairly inconsistent, but you can tell that he's improving as the season is going on, and he's like getting more comfortable with playing with the mons that he has. And I'm really a big fan of a lot of the transactions he's made as well. I know in the preseason power rankings, I was talking about how he didn't have weather modes, but he had 3 Pokemon that wanted weather modes. Well, he's gotten rid of 2 of them into basically strict upgrades at this point, and I think it's really a good improvement for his team. So overall, while his record may not reflect it, his play is improving, and I think compared to the 3 coaches who were before him, he has consistently played better even if the records are the same at this point. The Sandaconda obviously has been putting in some work this season, as have the Marshadow and Thundurus. Marshadow and Thundurus are a really difficult core to fully attack the way that you would want to attack them. So I think Johnny's team still has a lot of potential for him. All of his transactions make sense to me, and I'd say are pretty good. The second one is the most questionable, but I still like it, and the other 3 are pretty strict upgrades. So I like a lot of the way that he's been trending recently, but I think this really speaks to the depth and difficulty of this league this season, because I think the way Johnny's been playing and the transactions he's been making, he looks like a shoe-in playoff team in previous seasons, but here he's going to be fighting for a wild card spot. But what do you guys think?
Matt, we'll go to you, and then we'll finish with Ryan.
You know, I always have a hard time evaluating John. He's such a, yeah, I know, right? He's such a strange player. Like, who the fuck thought that Sandaconda was gonna be the mon of choice? Like, the man started with Marshadow, which is super cool and strong and has like some real good shit up top, and yet here we are looking at this
tier 5 or tier 4
Sand Snake. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about his games so far. They've been interesting, but I can never really get a handle on what's going on inside of his head. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. So transactions look nice, except for the first one, which breaks my heart because I'm pretty sure Marshadow is like the thing that can make Obstagoon work, and I just want Obstagoon to work. The others, yeah, they look good. Duraludon was sort of overlapping with some other stuff on his team. He picked up Rhyperior and yet prefers the Sandaconda for some reason. And the others are, yeah, getting rid of the weather modes is good. Roserade, yeah, it's just an upgrade when you don't have a sun mode. Malamar, I don't think has much of a history in this league at all, and I'm very interested to see him do something with it because he seems to like those tier 4s. So we'll see how that goes.
No, Malamar was drafted by Jizzy, and I don't think it was brought in season 1, and that's it.
Oh, well, Jizzy was a top player, so
yeah,
you know.
So
that fucking special Tauros made me
man.
lose my mind season 1. Anyway,
I'm just gonna reiterate a lot of what Matt said. If you try predicting what Johnny's gonna do, you're gonna run yourself insane. And I think the first 2 games is evidence of him running himself insane. If you go back and watch the
That's
videos, he himself looks confused at what he did, which is kind of funny. Johnny is Johnnying himself. But his game against Noah, it was weird. All Johnny games are going to be weird. And having him down here at 13 is just a pure sense of kind of just what happened so far. Do I think Johnny's the 13th ranked coach in the league? God, no. But do I think he could be? Yes. Do I think he could be number 1? Maybe. But that's fucking Johnny. He's not anything of... This is going to sound weird. He's not consistent in the way you would think a draft league player would be. Johnny is consistent in that he is insane in everything that he does. So he's 13th.
That's also the reason that, like, for most people, I would look at this and go, man, John, you need to start leaning on some of your more reliable high tier modes. You need to just like set up Trick Room and sweep with Red Fury, or you need to like just send out Mr. Mime with like a setup option and just like a big Maximon and blow shit up. You just need to just do the straightforward good shit that you have. And I still think that that's true, but like at this point I know better than to say that to him.
All right, Ryan, we'll finish this off with you.
Yeah, fuck. Johnny has always been the player that can lose to 16 on a given PR and beat 1. That's just how he is. Like, I'm always terrified to play Johnny. I think we're all always terrified to play Johnny because it's just like, you just don't know. Like, Johnny has I'd say he consistently gets the most upsets I'm not surprised by. Like, he'll win a game against someone that you don't expect to, or he'll like clutch a set that's really close against someone that he like they barely won by the skin of their teeth. And it's always John who does that shit. I mean, Johnny's not going to be 1-3 the whole season. He's going to get at least one win that completely fucks everybody's playoffs. And it'll be fine. I'm not too worried about this.
All right, next up, we got Ryan. I'm going to go ahead and start with this one. So, Ryan, sadly, is sitting at 1-3. In the previous PRs, he was unanimously voted 1. We unanimously have him at 13. He's made one transaction, which we haven't really got to see yet. I don't think.
Unanimously at 12. That's incorrect. I'm at my spot.
Yeah. There were Okay, hang on. 21. I don't know why that says 21.
He's 13, and then Ryan's 12.
All right, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway.
Ryan is put at 12 by all 4 of us.
Including myself. So.
This for me, and I've talked to Dan about this. The team isn't Ryan's play style. The team, I don't think your play style allows this team to do what it wants to. And that's really where I feel like your season is kind of going. You had one really good win against Razz, which is honestly one of Razz's better games, which we'll get to. But I just feel like the team, either the team is holding you back or you're holding the team back because of play style. And I know we got some things in the pipeline, but as of now, this is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's okay. I'll bounce back. But it is. I'm ready to be a little roasted here.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course your play's not terrible. I will say it's kind of bad right now, but again, I think that's play style dependent based on what you got. There's just not a lot of good things right now, and that's weird to say when you talk about Ryan, who's consistently finished at the top. But I'm gonna throw this to Dan, see if Dan has some better insight on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So when dissecting players' play styles, Ryan's play, he leads aggressively but plays very defensively. And he drafted a team that can lead defensively and play very aggressively in the late game. Like, in his commentary, you'll hear a lot of, I'm going to conserve Max so I can survive something later for the attack that's coming in. when his team is built to be the max right now, blow the opponent off the board because you don't really have the bulk late game outside of Celesteela to try and stick around too long. So the team doesn't mesh with the playstyle, but I think with a couple transactions, this team can be adjusted to better fit the style of play that you are looking to play with. Obviously, Celesteela, Azumarill, they're going to pick up kills, but they're also going to pick up some deaths. Latios at 1 kill is a bit underwhelming right now, but I still think the bones of the team are there. You just either have to mold your play style to play with it better, or mold a couple of the tertiary pieces of the team to better fit the way that you view and want to approach the game.
Fair enough, Matt.
This was another situation that I had a little bit of trouble evaluating. It was hard for me to put my finger on exactly what the issue has been here for you, Ryan, so far this season. I have some fragments of it in my head, so let's see if we can make something out of them. I find that your modes and game plans are a little bit strange. Especially I think the best example of that is probably the Persian Raichu lead you had against Razz with the Flame Orb Persian.
Okay, that was mostly a meme. That was very much a meme set. The ideal was pray Razz leads with Metagross or Marowak and trick a Flame Orb because it's funny.
Okay, well, fair enough.
That was the lead. That was why that was what it was. And I ran fake out on both because I thought it would confuse him, which it did. So
can confirm. We had this conversation before the game. Can confirm.
Yeah, it was basically a meme set. Like that was.
Okay, well that's fine. I still think you probably shouldn't have done that, but that's fine.
Yeah.
In any case, it seems to me like the tried and true modes that this team has just aren't really coming out, and it feels like sometimes you're getting a little too weird with the prep, and other times it feels a little bit like you're kind of just throwing mons on the field that have like some good stats and good moves and maybe some synergy behind them without maybe much of a plan, and it feels like I'm not saying this is exactly true, but this is what it felt like to me, and it feels a little bit like you're maybe just relying more on the good stuff you have and your in-game decision making rather than prepping out a whole like plan and flowchart, and I think that maybe puts a little bit too much of a burden on your decision making in the moment.
Yeah.
And I also think that maybe you are you're stretching yourself a little bit too thin, trying to use too much of the stuff that you have at your disposal instead of just going for the more straightforward combinations that you have at your disposal, I think.
All right, Ryan, sing us a sad goodbye song.
Sad goodbye song? Oh, damn. I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. I really actually what it's boiled down to, some of it has felt like format change, which is really weird because I did not think the change in format would feel significant, but it really has. Part of it is that I think Dan's a little right that the playstyle. The other thing is actually, because you talked about flowcharting, I'm actually having a shockingly difficult time flowcharting with this team. And I'm actually going to be spending a pretty good amount of my bye week I have this week attempting to flowchart out some matches with some transactions made. Because I have sort of a transaction plan I want to make and put into play. And I want to make sure that those transactions feel easier or better to flowchart with my style. Because right now I'm having a really tough time like coming up with plans that feel consistent and good into what people have. So I'm pretty I'm optimistic about the rest of my season. It's going to be tough, but I think my games have actually been pretty good. I mean, I thought I had a great set with Charles, and I liked my Razz set a lot. And I will give compliments to Toxic. That was probably the best I've ever seen him play. So, yeah, I'm optimistic, but it will be... there is definitely a road to take, and I'm very glad I have my bye this week to kind of reevaluate.
For sure. Moving on, we got number 10, and that is going to be Toxic. So, Ryan, why don't you go ahead and take this one?
Yeah, so Toxic got a good win on me, 2-0 +3. Has a forfeit loss to Dark, 0-2. 2-0 win on Burst, and then a -6, 0-2 loss on Anthony. He's 2-2, -4. His transactions have been Poltergeist for Slowking and Sharpedo for Crawdaunt. I like both of these. They're good. So Toxic is kind of weird to talk about. His game into me was, I think, his best of the season so far, and he played it and prepped it really, really well, and I thought he did a lot of really good stuff in it. Then we have that forfeit loss to Dark, so we have no clue how that would have gone. Then the Burst game was okay. It was a win for him, but it wasn't... It didn't feel as good, though.
It felt more of a loss for Burst or a loss to Burst than a win for Toxic.
Yeah, if that makes sense. And then the Anthony game, he did not go in with a very good plan and got really hurt by that. The combination of having the forfeit with that recent Anthony game and the kind of tepid Burst win is why he's here at the bottom of the 2-2 coaches. Because we did kind of split it 1-3, 2-2, etc. With the combination of those things, it kind of is weird because he started with a really, really strong game that made people really look at him, and then he really hasn't lived up to that sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing that really kind of struck me the wrong way into Anthony was mostly how he went into the game. You're facing a Deancey and a Scizor, and you're not clicking follow me on your Indeedee to set Trick Room yourself with your Necrozma. I just was incredibly confused. And then other than that, yeah, the forfeit to Dark sucks. That would have been a really good deciding game as to where we're actually going to put Toxic. And then, like I said, the Burst game felt more of a loss for Burst than a win for Toxic. And then the set against Ryan, if that's how he played the other 3 games, we'd have Toxic way higher than he is now.
Oh yeah, 100%. And his team, I think, is actually a lot better than it was listed in PRs too.
Yeah.
As well. I think his team should have probably been a couple spots higher on PRs. At least the preseason.
Yes,
it's working a lot better
agree.
in practice and theory.
Me and you were on the same page on that one. But when you look at the Mon we chose to highlight, we picked the Arctozolt, but it only came to 1 match, and that was against Ryan. It was honestly the reason he beat Ryan. But he's relying very heavily on Necrozma and Indeedee Zapdos, like he should. That is a super good combo. It's really hard to figure out which one is actually going to lead next to the Indeedee. I think the Indeedee's been led every single game. But other than that, he's had solid games. The forfeit sucks, and you're playing to Anthony, honestly, in my eyes, was just god-awful terrible. And that's kind of why you're down here. You might not be deserving of going this far down, but as of now, this is where I think you kind of fit. But Dan, why don't we go to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Toxic is playing better this season on the whole than he has in previous seasons, except for this last week. I think Anthony is the only game he's lost that has been played. But his win into Burst wasn't super impressive. His win into Ryan was incredibly impressive. I think the Toxic that played Ryan could contend with any other coach in the league right now. The Toxic that played Burst could make the playoffs, and the Toxic that played Anthony could finish dead last. So I think it all depends on which Toxic decides to bring any given week.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to come down to his prep, which I think needs some improvement is not exactly the right word, but maybe some more
adjustments.
Diversification.
Okay.
I think it's you need to there's so much more stuff that I'm looking to see from this team that we haven't even scratched the surface of yet. It's been, every time he's used the Necrozma and DD Zapdos stuff, it's just been extremely standard. It's just been kind of spam stuff with just a big offensive Zapdos. He hasn't even brought Slowking yet. He's still putting Trick Room on his Necrozma, which I think is almost every time I think is wrong. I think you need to lean more into making Necrozma a part of your fast mode. You need it to you want it to benefit from Tailwind or Zapdos Max Airstream.
I think it gets autotomized, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. You can do that as well. You've got the redirection for it, so you can do that, and you can also run. We have yet to see a physical Necrozma. It gets both Swords Dance and Dragon Dance, both of which are very viable next to Indeedee. There's you have some support options on Zapdos, which we have yet to see, especially the coaching if you want to try physical Necrozma or coaching hell next to Diggersby. We have yet to see the Crobat, which could be a great partner for any of these mons that want to go fast, and especially if they want to go physical, you can toss a Screech on there. There's just a lot of things that I'm still waiting to see from this team. That and the Slowking as well, which I mentioned. The great part about having Slowking here is that you can make Necrozma part of your fast mode and also bring a Trick Room mode on the same set of 6 mons. With like the Slowking Escavalier, for example. So I want to see way more different stuff from Toxic. Now that's not to say he shouldn't ever use these standard modes. It's not to say that he should just go out and try all this different shit immediately. Like, tailor it to your matchup, of course. But there's gonna be a time and a place for a lot of the different stuff he has on this team, and we just haven't really seen any of it yet. So that's what I would like to see from Toxic. And if he starts doing that, he's going to become a lot less predictable. When I was helping Anthony prep a little bit for this match, not too much, but I was able to predict like the majority of what he prepped, like almost exactly. Which is a problem. So you need to show your future opponents that you're willing and able to do everything that this team allows you to do.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Every time we've talked about Toxic in every season, diversity is one of his drawbacks.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that some of it is just that, I get that, like, having a linear team's not a bad thing, per se, but, God, this team is not linear at all.
Mm-mm.
I mean, there's so much this team can do,
Yes,
and
sir.
prepping for it is a nightmare. As someone who played, as the only person here who's played Toxic, prepping for this team is an absolute fucking nightmare. Bipard, Crobat, Diggersby, the Crawdaunt, the Slowking, like, everything, the Hail mode, and then that Trick Room mode with Escav too, and you always have to worry about, like, you can try to snarl in a Necrozma, but it can run weakness policy, and if you do that, you lose.
Zapdos.
Or switch into Zapdos. It's so hard to deal with Toxic's team, in theory. But in practice, if you bring the same sets every week with a team that's big draw is its diversity, then you're not going to get as many wins as you probably should be.
Right.
I'm going to disagree with you on just one point. I think this is a very linear team. It just has many, many ways that
that is true. It is linear, but it has a lot of
The team
options.
is linear, the mons aren't. Yeah.
No, yeah.
I think that's what you're saying, right, Matt?
Yeah, no, you're correct. So
Okay.
I just said that poorly. Thanks, Matt.
Moving on to number 10, we have Razz. Let's go to Dan with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So Razz, I think, has had a fairly impressive beginning to the season. Coming into the league as a new coach is always going to be a little intimidating. He got a clean 2-0 week 1 But again, I think that was more that his opponent failed to prep for his most obvious mode, which he brought and was very successful with. And then week 2, he had a very, very good accounting of himself against Ryan, but ended up dropping a close set. I think he had opportunities in the first game that he lost, but game 3, Ryan definitely outled him that game. Losing to Dina, there's no shame in that. Dina's been having a phenomenal season so far. And then being able to beat Johnny 2-1 with some pretty interesting sets. Overall, Razz has been very impressive so far. His transactions, dropping the Dunsparce for the Behemoth, is a very solid overall transaction, as is dropping the Frostmoth for the Executor. I think those are both improvements for his team because the Frostmoth was really struggling onto a lot of his team. And he's got really nice kill diversity on his team, which is something that I look for. He's got Pokemon in every tier that can threaten to attack you, and he's brought everything except his new Executor at least once so far. So he's going to be very difficult to prep for. I think his big drawbacks is Razz gets pre-tilted a lot. He is convinced he is going to lose certain games or sets before they happen, and it causes him to tilt and make some bad decisions, and that's one of his big weaknesses across a variety of leagues. But I think he's actually been playing at a very impressive level. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, so I just noticed he has 3 Trick Room setters that are all different typings, which is awesome, other than the overlap to grass. But no, Razz coming into this, knowing his previous leagues, not going to completely shit on him. They haven't been great. Razz is a funny dude, and his content is fantastic. But you can tell when he gets tilted, usually like in the first 2 turns, and things start going bad, just like Dan said. But I felt like that's been kind of mitigated this season to where he's playing very, very good. If you're going to get tilted and confused, you're going to do that against Johnny, but he ended up winning the game. So that does kind of attest to what Dan was saying about how he does get tilted, but he's been doing very good at it this season. Yes, the Torn Metagross is so terrifying, so strong, and his best mode, but seeing how, Drago has 4, Grim has 3, Marowak has 6 kills, just shows you that he's doing more than just leaning hard on Metagross, which I think is a very good indicator of how the rest of his season is actually going to go. If you prep hard for Torn Metagross, you might lose to Drago, Marowak, or the Grimmsnarl, So I think his team is phenomenal. His play's been really good. If he just makes maybe 1 or 2 steps higher, I do think he is just a phenomenal threat in this league. And I'm super glad to see that from Razz. But Matt, why don't you go ahead and take it on next?
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add, but I think he's in a solid spot. I've loved his team this entire time. I think that his transactions have been nothing but improvements, especially the Behemoth. I've been impressed with his play for sure. Listening to his his thought process as he's going through the battles, and he's thinking things out in a competent way and making good decisions, even when things don't necessarily go his way. I think he's got good reasons for doing what he does. His prep has definitely been there. I've seen him a little bit in the past in some other leagues, and I think his prep, both his prep and his play here, is significantly better than what I've seen in the past. So, he's making good use of the different parts of his draft. I think that's one of the major things that sets him apart from Toxic at the number 11 slot. Because like you said, Maxwell, you can see here on the kill death sheet, there's a variety of things that are actually going in and doing the work. Yeah, I think he's in a solid spot. I think if he keeps doing what he's doing and steps his game up just a little bit, I think he can actually make he can finish in a decent spot, even with the the division he's in, because the red division is obviously very difficult.
Ryan.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be too secretive about this. I have actually helped Razz for his past 2 games, into Dina and Johnny. Not like an overwhelming amount, but because Razz came here with a little less experience than some of our other coaches, kind of talked with Maxwell, and also because Hunter was originally taking the spot and Razz would transition into the team. We went ahead and I helped him out a little bit with Dina and Johnny, and I'm helping him a little more next week, and then he's on his own. Now, one thing that is, I think that just talking with Razz, one, he is, I think people are frequently deceived by how much he knows about the game and how solid he is as a player. I honestly, every time I talk with Razz about a given plan for the week, he does all his own calcing, other than fixing the Trevenant speeds and doing some stuff like that for Johnny week. Everything's been very good on that end. He's got really good ideas, very creative player, and a lot of what I've been chatting with him about is really just kind of trying to take your good ideas and your good prepping ideas and adapting them to work better in a wider variety of contexts. And I've been really, really, really impressed with that. And I think that he is in this league currently having his best showing. And it's largely independent. I'm really not doing very much here. I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything. But he is largely doing he's doing 95%+ of his stuff on his own, and it's very good. So, and outside of next week, I mean, I'm pretty much leaving him on his own, and I'm very excited to see what he does. So,
Good shit. Moving on is Jess. I will not lead this one, so why don't you guys go ahead? Ryan, you keep on talking.
I'm probably the least opinionated on this one. By the way, 2-2 coaches were the hardest. The next, the thing we argued the most about were Jess up, basically. Yep. The 2-2 coaches were the ones that we had the toughest time determining. I think all 4 of us had different orders. So Jess has had a very interesting season. So she has a +5 win against Tay, a very dominant game. 0-2 into Dina, that's a -3, but I think it was a really good set, especially her game 2 there. She has an 0-2 into Dan with a -4. That felt that I think is just more of a loss, but Dan's a pretty good player, and it was a good set. And then she got a forfeit win on Charles, which really sucks, because honestly, Charles v Jess would have been a massive tiebreaker for those 2 coaches in helping us with these placements of the 2-2 coaches. But unfortunately, it's just a forfeit win, and that data is a little harder to work with. So I really like all her transactions. Vaporeon for Dragalge, Garchomp for Urshifu, and Toxicroak for Sandslash. I think are all good. The only one I'm a little questionable of is the Sandslash A, but it makes sense. I mean, I like it with the Aurorus. I'm just not 100% on how good that weather mode's going to be, but I'm excited to see it pop out. I just like Toxicroak. I'm like the only person in the whole fucking league who likes Toxicroak. I'll admit bias there. Other than that, you see nice wide variety of kills and mons and usages. I think her prep's been great. Jess always preps well. I think that it's, of the 2-2 coaches, she feels very, very strong. It's a little hard to determine why her placement's here. I think part of it is that we don't have a game to have seed into Charles, which would have been really helpful. And because we didn't see that game, we only have the Tay win. Tay's a lower ranked coach, and then a loss into Dina, which no shame, but it was a good game, and then a loss into Dan, which is a little more unfortunate. So Jess was just a really hard to place, but I think she's doing really well, and her team's cool, and I actually think those transactions help her out a lot. I think that I was actually a little more wary of Jess's draft initially, but with these changes, I think it's a really, really strong and really shaping up. So I'm very excited for the rest of her season.
Yeah, I think the transactions are, spoiler alert, fantastic, because the Urshifu in particular obviously is something I was pushing for on her team, and I love it here. The only real issue with this kind of combination of like her fighting Psychic Dark Core with the Fire Water Grass Core is that the Zerud and Urshifu share some weaknesses. I've kind of used a similar comp to that myself with Keldeo instead of Urshifu. But I think on her comp in particular, the Magnezone picks up the slack there a lot. It can really help shore up the fairy weakness, the flying weakness, and the electric weakness a little bit defensively with the Urshifu and the Moltres. In any case, yeah, her prep's definitely been very good. I would like to. It's the Charles game. I think probably would have been the most important and maybe most telling game out of these four if it got played.
Yep.
Which is really unfortunate, and also leaves me wanting more from Jess, because she's taken 2 losses to two of the league's best players, and then she took a win off of Tay, which was more or less a free win, which we kind of discussed earlier. So team is great, prep has been good. I just want to see more going forward, and that's not really her fault. Just it was unfortunate how she had to get that win this last week.
Yeah, I mean the cards tumble as they do. This 9 through whatever really could be in any order, and as far as I'm concerned, it is in any order because none of us could agree on anything. But
no, you're gonna see decimals on every single one of them.
Yeah, so it's okay. We were pretty much in agreement on Toxic and Razz, but after that, it was like, I don't know.
Now, Dan, since you played her, I'm gonna go ahead and go next. I've expressed this in the admin chat, but I feel like if the Charles game actually got played and she actually took, let's say, a 2-0 plus 4, she's potentially at the top of the 2 and 2s.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Granted, on the other end, if she lost, she's probably at the middle to bottom of the 1 and 3s.
Yeah.
But like Ryan said, her prep has been honestly phenomenal. She's always creative. I feel like the Mew has kind of been one-dimensional, except the admins have at least seen the paste for Charles, where she was not being one-dimensional with the Mew at all. But seeing how she's using things like the Zerud, the Moltres, and the Magnezone, hell, even the Aurorus in week 1, leads me to be a little more confident in the top. Because, Mimikyu is going to do Mimikyu things. It's her favorite mon on her draft aside from Mew, and she's very versed at using it, and you can see that in her games. Most of her Mimikyu sets are different. Togetic, it's just there to die. So I'm confident. She is, of course, one of the better coaches here. She won Season 1. But I do feel like the forfeit win to Charles actually hurt her more than anything. But I have to be biased, so Dan, why don't you talk about this? Oh, also, she had no idea what freaking Gourgeist did. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the match versus me was the most important one for me, maybe out of any match in the 2 and 2s when it came to trying to determine seeding within the 2 and 2s. I think Jess has played really well, but we haven't seen a video of her winning since week 1, which again is probably coloring our
judgment,
opinion of her to some extent. But she played very well into Dina, and then into me. I unleashed prep on her that she wasn't ready for, and that happens to everyone. It happened to me at some points during the season.
She literally looked at me and said, "What does this pumpkin do?" And I said, "It's probably there to reverse your Trick Room." And then you max it, and both of our faces were like, "Well."
Yeah, that happens sometimes. The pumpkin's fun, but the one thing about Jess that I'm nervous about is that when I was looking at prep into her team, she did seem to have a bit of a noticeable ghost weakness outside of the Zerud. And if you're able to neutralize the Zerud, ghost types seem generally good into her team. But otherwise, I think that her play is always very solid. She's always well prepared for her matches, but I don't think any of her skills are in the 8 to 10 range, but I think almost all of her skills are in like that 6 to 7 range, which is very different than a lot of other coaches that have like 1 or 2, phenomenal skills and then a couple like obvious weaknesses. I don't think Jess has any obvious weaknesses in her prep, her play, her way to attack matchups. but I don't think she has any like single-handed strengths that she can rely on either. And I think that is both one of her greatest strengths and one of her greatest weaknesses. So again, no obvious strengths or weaknesses.
Jack of all, master of none.
Yep, basically.
Is that everybody? Yeah, that's everybody.
Believe so.
Moving on, we got number 8, which is actually going to be Charles. Matt, do you want to take this one?
I can start. Yeah. I don't remember a whole lot about some of a couple of these games. Well, mostly the Johnny game, I guess. Haven't been paying a huge amount of attention to the red stuff, but Charles was actually the coach that I put at the top of the 2-2s. Personally, I think his prep and his play has been excellent. I think he's if he keeps going the way he's going, he's gonna inch himself into the top echelon of MDL players. I've been impressed with him so far. Even in the game against Anthony, which was the one actual loss that we see here. It was a very hard-fought game. It was very close, and he had a lot of really great prep. Not going to go into detail on that since we already did on the first week video that we did in the first week. But and then he took. It's a little bit hard to evaluate these wins, I guess, given where Ryan is in the power rankings right now, and given what Johnny is, which is like, who the hell knows what John is. But yeah, I mean, he was if we look at the games he's actually played, he's 2-1 and had some really creative prep, really solid play, got some good wins. Unfortunately, we the forfeit to Jess was really unfortunate because we would have that would have been pretty telling between the two of them. Like Ryan said, that would have been a good tiebreaker since they're right here next to each other. But I at least feel like we have, or at least I have a better feel for how Charles is doing as opposed to Jess. Jess, I felt like I needed more information, and Charles, I feel like I want to see more because he's doing well and his team is cool, and he's got a lot of good. He's been creative in his prep, but I feel like he's been pretty solid every time we've seen him play a game, and the transactions I kind of like too. The obviously the Audino Togepi it's a little bit weird that he went back and forth there, especially with the limited transactions that we have this season. But the Audino Cursula is definitely a good way to shore up his Trick Room mode. I'm excited to see him make use of that, and it's not so obvious that you just run Trick Room into Charles and win anymore. So that was a really good adjustment. If I were him, I would probably try to get the Togepi back in the Turtonator slot. But that's less of a big deal than making sure you actually have some Trick Room stuff. So decent transactions there, even if there was a little bit of indecision in the beginning. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, Charles, of course, has been phenomenal. The forfeit is unfortunate. Again, everybody's going to say it. That's the game that everybody wishes would have got played. One thing I do want to say, outside of the Weavile, which I think was only got kills in the Johnny game, he's really relying on the Genesect Lele, which, of course, why not? They're two phenomenal mons that hit like trucks. And with that Blastoise next to him, it's really been that those two mons have really been able to kind of explode and do 9 and 7 kills respectively. But outside of that, I want to see more Terrakion, but there's a lot of follow me, so you can't really do that. The Drifblim Lele has been really, really good. That lets his team go extremely fast, even though when you look at his team, it's kind of middling speed, with Terrakion and Weavile really being the only fast mons. But having that unburdened Tailwind really lets him fight those faster matchups. And then shoring up the Trick Room mode has honestly been very promising for me. The Turtonator, I've tried using it before. It's not a good Pokemon. I'm a big believer in the Cursula, so I'm excited to see that. It does, like Matt said, make it to where setting Trick Room just isn't almost an auto win, at least on paper against Charles. But if I just wish the Jess game got played, we would have had a lot more data on both of them, and we would be more sure about their placements. But from what we've seen from Charles, there's nothing to doubt where he's at. If this was a win, Charles is looking maybe at top 4s. But that's kind of what we got. So Dan or Ryan, one of you two, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I see a pretty easy path to get the Togepi in the Turtonator slot. He has to drop Audino for Togepi, then he can drop Turtonator for Audino the following week, and that would functionally put Togepi in for that Turtonator slot. But beyond that, I think Charles has played very impressively. Each of the sets he's been playing, he's never been out of it at any point in time, which I think is always a really good skill to have. He's never been out of really any single game. And I think his Week 5 matchup is going to do a really good job of clarifying a lot of the situation in the Red Division. But
who
I think
is it?
It's me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's going to do a really good job of clarifying a lot of the situation in the Red Division. But I think that Charles is Charles. He's playing really well. He's going to be in every set, and I like his team. I've liked his team for a while, but there are going to be some potential issues always when you have a forfeit loss, and part of that is going to be we really don't know how to siege you, and a forfeit really punishes both the players on both sides because we don't actually see anyone win that match, even if someone gets the win recorded.
Yeah, I don't have much. Charles has my favorite game of the season I've played personally. That was a blast. GG's to him. I think he's having a great season, honestly. Part of the issue is it's very hard to judge where he should be at in the 2 and 2s because of that forfeit win. I like all his transactions. Don't have a whole hell of a lot more to say. He's doing well. I think his team's great, and I think that he is very much a contender for locking one of those playoff slots.
All right, moving straight on. We got Dan. I'll go ahead and start this one. At the beginning of the season, I almost thought Dan wasn't making playoffs. It wasn't great, but he's really turned it on. Of course, the win against Jess, you see that stupid little fucking pumpkin. Really put in a lot of work. And then the win against Dina, I'll let him talk more about it, but it was phenomenally played, very well prepped. And it really proved that Dan isn't just a schmuck, to be honest. But one thing, and I know Dan has kind of talked about it already, when it comes to kill diversity, Gourgeist, of course, it got all of its kills into Jess and maybe I think 2 into Dina, if I'm not mistaken, I think. But then you're really leaning on the Zamazenta Kyurem, which isn't really surprising. But when you have things like Primarina and Giglith that I don't think has even hit the field, that you were super high on in the beginning and not really doing anything, it really puts your eggs in 2 baskets. You always can't put your eggs in the Gourgeist basket, let's be honest.
What?
But
damn it, that's my problem this season.
But, you know, Zamazenta has phenomenal stats, but it can't max, so I don't really think it's an issue when you're immediately getting a +1 in defense on entrance. But other than that, the first 2 games were so disappointing, knowing how well Dan is as a player. And then, you know, just turning it on, I do think is why he is in the 7 slot, even though he has literally the worst differential out of everybody. In the 2 and 2s, by a large margin. I think the closest one is either -3 or -4.
-4 with Toxic, yeah.
Yeah. So I think just the sudden shift in momentum for Dan is why he's at 7 and not 9, 10 maybe. But you never can't count Dan out of a match. just the first two, like I said, they were just disappointing. Matt.
Yeah, it was a little bit hard to know what to do with Dan because those two first matches, like, it's almost hard to count them against him because the Hector game was just like, it didn't really matter what Dan did. He didn't prep for the Zen mode stuff and got punished for it super hard. And then the match against Noah, there was some pretty significant RNG that held him back a lot. And then these last 2 weeks, we got to see more of what Dan is actually capable of doing, and which we knew already. For somebody like Dan or Ryan, they're not doing as well as a lot of us would have expected, but they're still obviously top players in the league because of the history that they've had within the league. So I think it's the last 2 weeks that we saw from Dan are they make more sense than the first two. I like what he's been doing with some of these mons. Prep's been pretty creative. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Wheezing because it feels like it's kind of trash to me, but I hope that it's good. It was good this week, mostly because it just made Gorgeist good, I guess. It's not all it did, of course. Will-O-Wisp was important, especially when you actually hit it. But
Too soon.
Damn.
Dan hitting a Will-O-Wisp? Full moon out? What the fuck?
Anyway. I like the kind of diversity in what he's been doing with some of his top mons. The Kyurem, I know that we've seen both physical and special Kyurem so far. There's a little bit more that I am hoping to see come out from the Kyurem. There's also Zamazenta. Like I've seen some different movesets from it, but I want to see the Zamazenta shine a little bit more, which may be a little bit difficult since it can't max. I don't know. There's still a lot about this team that, like, there's some question marks here. But I like that we've been scratching the surface of what the interesting mons can do, and I'm looking forward to where Dan is going with them. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Ryan?
Fuck Dan. That's about it.
All right. Before Dan goes, this one is probably the most different when it came to the four of us ranking him. I ranked him the lowest. Dan, now tell everybody why you're fifth.
Yeah, I rated myself at
I'm dead. I'm dead.
the
I'm
highest
gonna
of
leave.
the.
I'm sorry, Dan. I had to. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm perfectly willing to defend it. It's because I have the highest strength of schedule out of any of the 2-2 players. I've played 2 3-1 players and 2 2-2 players to bring my total opponent record to 10-6, which is the highest in the league. I have the best win on paper, which is the win against Dina, out of any of the 2-2 players as well. So those hit both of my consistent criterias across multiple seasons. But beyond that, I'm pretty happy with the way the team performed. Hector 100% just out-prepped me week one, and there was nothing I could do. Well, there was something I could do about it, but I played poorly, but really got shocked by the prep. And then the Noah match did have some RNG factors both ways, but the crit into Zamazenta and the miss on the wide lens Will-O-Wisp, which I missed my first 3 Will-O-Wisps this season. I finally hit the 4th one. But man, I don't know if I like that move anymore.
Dan, you're missing Will-O-Wisp with wide guards. I haven't missed an 80% accurate move on Electivire this whole season.
Yeah, it's
here's the thing, Dan, you didn't play in Gen 5, so you're not allowed to complain about Will-O-Wisp accuracy until you dealt with, the nonsense accuracy from back in the day.
Hey, look, you can just call me Aaron Zhang because I can't buy a Will-O-Wisp hit.
Yep.
But beyond that, I think that the team is super solid. I'm happy with the way Gorgeist is performing. And I do still like Gigalith, but I just haven't had a good matchup into the Blastoise team, the Excadrill team, the Rapid Strike team, or the Melmetal team. Like, none of those are the matchup I want to bring
Hey man,
Gigalith into.
full push.
It will come at some point. And I do have some creative sets for Zamazenta just ready to go at some point, but the way I've wanted to play it these first 4 weeks is I want to trade everything early and then set up a 1v1 after opponent's max is over at the end of the game, where it's Zamazenta versus anything, because Zamazenta wins every 1v1 in the format, basically, or you can build it to win every one of them. So I think that the team is coming together pretty well. I think my play has really improved since week 1, and then the little bit of RNG nonsense that was the week 2 match. But I don't know. I'm pretty happy, and I think the transaction is good because I've played with Wheezing once before, and I've really liked it. Choice Band Explosion is a real set.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say.
All right, moving on. We got Gumi. Matt, go ahead.
Okay, so thank fucking Christ there is a Rillaboom here, because, like, goddamn, that makes the team, man. I think he ended up... I'm starting there because this is genuinely what I think is the most important part of this whole thing here. The Zeraora, just like, yeah, it was fine. It's okay. I don't think it's that great of a tier 1. It's kind of cool, it's super fast, whatever, but it also adds an extra ground weakness, which you really don't need. And then the Rillaboom not only changes that into a ground resist, but also gives you a much better offensive matchup into opposing ground types. So, which makes a lot of this team better, because it really relies pretty heavily on some pretty strong special attacking max options. Anyway, also Wishy-Washy. Awesome. Yeah, fuck Poliwrath. Wishy-Washy all the way. So, Gumi's been doing fairly well. Again, we have a game here that we didn't actually get to see. Like we've heard, it was apparently a pretty solid win against Dark. I think he's had pretty good prep, even in the games that he lost. I think his game against Maxwell, that Max Strike Tailwind stuff ended up being pretty good. Wasn't good enough to win him the whole game, but I liked that he had that extra hit on the Latias and that extra speed control, since Maxwell, you also had Tailwind, and Volcanian's not the fastest thing. So, and then there was, I believe he had Grassy Seed, Tornadus Therian into Hector, which seemed pretty good because Hector has enjoyed using that Darmanitan quite a bit. He's had pretty good prep, pretty good play. Not perfect, obviously. I've picked apart some of his mistakes a little bit before, but overall, very solid. The team has definitely gotten better with these transactions. Both transactions, I think, are very significant upgrades. That's about all I've got. Wish we got to see the game against Dark. I'd sort of Gumi is another player that I would like to see more of. I don't think it's as essential to see more from Gumi than from some of the other players that are maybe missing a game or two, but I would definitely like to see more of what this team can do and more of what he pulls out on the prep. And I would the only other thing I would say is maybe like, I know he's he really enjoys his Avalugg. Maybe lean a little bit more into your higher tier mons, because the Avalugg, it's cool sometimes, it'll do well sometimes, but it definitely won't do well all the time. We've seen we saw the downfalls of Avalugg at least once so far. So I want to see a little bit more variety from the top end of this team in terms of what these mons are capable of doing as well.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about priority, I think that's kind of one of the good things about Gumi. Not so much like utilization, but if you look, the only things that haven't even been brought are the Vigavolt and the Skarmory, which are, situational at best. But everything else has kills, more than one. Other than the Rune, which, sets Trick Room and usually doesn't do much after that, in most cases. But everything is pulling its weight offensively. Even the Grim Snarl, who is usually used as a support mon, is picking up kills as well, which I think both of them came from Dark. But Gumi overall has been solid. There hasn't been one thing that I'm like, ooh, that kind of sucks. It just hasn't really been anything that's like, oh my god, I really love that. He has been creative, but kind of like Matt said, the creativity is good, but hasn't been enough to pick up a win. It's been enough to make games close. I have confidence in Gumi that he'll make playoffs, but I do think he's kind of leaning on the Avalugg a little too much. But other than that, again, nothing but confidence for Gumi. I do think he's in a good spot. So that's kind of all I got. Dan, why don't we throw it to you?
Yeah, I think he's playing very well. I do think he had a bit of a rough matchup into you, and then Hector played with a mode that he wasn't necessarily expecting that went off, which is a trend for Hector. But I don't have too much to add on that hasn't already been said. I do agree that the Avalugg is cool, but maybe not the most consistent mode. But if you bust it out every once in a while, I'll be happy with it. Yeah, that's just about all I have to say on this one.
Ryan?
When Matt was talking, I wrote the next great American novel. That was really fun. Other than that, not too much. I'm going to be honest, similar to how Matt was talking about having not watched all of the Red Division games, I haven't seen all of the blue ones. Really, the only Gumi match I've really sat down and watched was the Johnny one and actually analyzed. The other ones I just kind of saw and was like, okay, and then I moved on with my day and they kind of left my head. I think he's doing well. I think he has I think conceptually he has one of the cooler teams in the league, and I liked his game. I remember Najani quite a bit. So yeah, I think Gumi is having a pretty solid season. I knew he definitely would. Looking forward to kind of seeing where he goes from here.
It was also a little bit difficult to digest the game against Hector, just given how
oh my god, that was
recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even touch that one. No. I'm not gonna lie.
We had to break it down and we didn't
made
touch
some
it.
Judgment calls.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Also, his whole team is weak to Mamoswine except Wishy Washy. Next, Noah. Dan, why don't you go ahead and take the lead for this one?
Yeah, Noah's season's been weird. I think that's the best way to put it. He had a very good showing against you week 1 that he lost. Week 2, he had the match that's been discussed quite a lot against me, where he did have enough positive RNG events, but he also played well enough to capitalize upon those RNG events. Against Johnny just did his speed tiers correctly and exploited some of the weaknesses on Noah's team. And I don't know, that match with Ryan was just all over the place. I don't know
what the fuck happened. I still don't know what that game was. I literally messaged Dan and went, I'm so happy we're doing PRs this week because I do not want to talk about that game.
So he's got basically a lot of matches that he's played, and I still don't know how good or bad his team is or how good or bad his play is, but he got some very decent showings in every week except the week against Johnny. So there's definitely an argument for him being at the top of the pack for these 2 and 2s. If you look at his kill diversity, Marowak's is kill leader, but every Pokemon that's in tier 1 or 2 has at least 3 kills on his team, and then the Alchemy also has 6 kills and has been very effective for his team. I don't think the Glaceon or Cradily have hit the field, or the Umbreon, so he's had Oh, it's hit the field, but it hasn't.
Yeah, it hit,
died
it
in
hit,
the
it hit field
Right,
against
right.
me, yeah. And
Right,
he brought
right.
Umbreon into me, so even though it hasn't hit the field, he's brought it.
Yeah, but I think he's been playing with a very narrow range of Pokemon, and I'd like to see that expand a bit more. But otherwise, I can't really complain about the way that his results have come out. And, this is a results-oriented game, and his results have all been there. So he's obviously doing a decent amount correct still. But what do you guys think?
Ryan,
I'll
go
take
ahead.
this.
Yeah.
Noah's had a really interesting season. Noah took a break and he's coming back. So we had a whole season without Noah. And during his previous MDL season, he did pretty good, but there was never any games that I was like, yeah, it really stuck out. And he really stuck to his modes really hard that whole season. He did not diversify a lot. I actually kind of disagree with Dan. I think this season he's diversified his team and play and prep a lot. We're seeing a lot more interesting draft text from him. He's bringing a lot of different mons into my team. He brought a bunch of stuff that he hasn't brought before, and even let Credilli hit the field, which has never done that before. So he actually is, I think, starting to, in a sense, fall into that mold, and he's always been a very good player. Like, the thing with Noah in his previous season to me was I always felt like this guy's a really good player, but he's not doing enough to take advantage of the draft format to really elevate his team. I think that he took a break and he's coming back, and I'm starting to see that. I feel like he still could go a little further with it, because I feel like that's part of the reason Johnny got such a good win on him. But other than that, I mean, I've actually been really impressed with all of Noah's games, including the one into Johnny. I thought he played it well. And I think that the big thing with him that I'm really keeping an eye on is that his prep has evolved a lot from the prior season. So if that continues to evolve and change with keeping that level of play that I know he's always been capable of, I think that he's a very, very potential top contender. But we also need to see more, if that makes sense. He's had some pretty weird games. And I'm going to be honest, and every set he's had, RNG has actually, and I don't like saying this, but RNG has leaned positive in all of his sets. I want to see what happens if Noah gets a game where RNG is not in his favor and he has to adapt a little more. I haven't really seen a ton of that.
Was there any RNG in Johnny's game?
Not particularly.
Okay.
If I recall.
I was about to say, against me, he lived on one twice. Against Dan, the crits and the Willow miss. But this is the only coach that hasn't made a transaction. And for a team incredibly weak to fighting, he's worked around it really well in his prep and play. I wish there was a transaction. Glaceon honestly has no business being on this team. And to an extent, I agree with Umbreon not needing to be here either. I think there are some better options that could go there that will help, I guess, lessen the load of having to prep for, Zamazenta, Marshadow. Hell, even good steel types are good against him in the Melmetal and the Celesteela. But I do think if the Umbreon and the Glaceon maybe were something different, it would alleviate some of that pressure and kind of make some of these RNG-ish matches not based on RNG at all. But those are kind of my thoughts. Noah, I know, is a phenomenal player. I competed with him in Collinsville, and he was as well one win away from making top cut. So I know he's a good player. He's been playing phenomenal. Prep is really, really good, capitalizing on a lot of good things. I just wish, some of the team members were a little bit more optimized. But Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you about the transactions. There definitely should be some. He doesn't necessarily need to make a ton of them, but 0 is definitely the wrong number. That being said, he's actually, given the obvious weaknesses of his team, he's actually been using his play and his team's synergy to overcome that quite a bit. I've actually been very impressed with the way that I've seen him play, and but that's not to say that that his play and his synergy are good enough. You still probably want some extra support and to lighten the load of your physical attackers. a little bit. He's been leaning pretty hard on this Alcremie as his not only a special attacker but also a fairy type to help deal with opposing fighting types. And obviously he needs something to deal with opposing fighting types, and he's been doing surprisingly well with the Alcremie. Just using it as a kind of a dazzling gleam bot. He hasn't even really been using Decorate much. I think we saw it onto the Marowak in the game against Ryan, but it didn't end up mattering. So I'd like to see more of that, but it's hard to expect that from the Alcremie when he's actually using it pretty effectively as kind of this special attacking fairy type crutch. But yeah, some extra transactions to lighten the load that Alcremie is carrying would definitely help. Some more stuff to shore up the fighting weaknesses, to maybe some more special attackers, maybe some more support, because there's still one of the main weaknesses we noted in the preseason power rankings is that there is no follow me and no fake out on this entire draft, and that's still, like I said, his prep and play and the synergy of his team seems to be able to overcome that in a lot of situations, but it would still be better to have it. So that's those are kind of my thoughts. Overall, impressed. I think he's probably done better than most of us expected. But yeah, team is good, could be better. The avenues to improving it are pretty clear, and he should do that.
Yep. Now moving on to our next tier of coaches is Hector. And Matt, I'm actually going to throw this one to you to start.
Okay, so we've been seeing a very different Hector this season from last time. It was there were times when it was a little bit difficult to see kind of what Hector was doing last season. His game plan wasn't always clear. His prep seemed kind of weird sometimes, especially with the citrus berries on the Doug trio. This is a different Hector, I think. His team is quite a bit stronger than it was last time. He's showing up with really good prep. He has this is our first coach that we're seeing with a 3-1 record. Even the one loss that he has, he still did well into Anthony, and Anthony, of course, being his one loss, is also one of our top our top players here. So no shame in losing to one of the top players. And the other games he's done rather well. In his prep and play, I think, are both pretty significantly improved from last time, and his team, like I mentioned, of course. There are some members of his team that I would like to see more from, and there's others that I think are just kind of meh. I'm not super excited about his tier 4s. Talonflame and Crocodile haven't really done anything yet. Frostlast, I think, is great on the team. I just want to see I want to see it actually do stuff. And the Hydreigon on the kill death sheet should actually be Duraludon. I've been talking to him a little bit about his transactions. That one does seem a little bit weird since he just picked it up and then dropped it. That is part of a more not a super long-term plan, but he has some transactions in mind to go with the Duraludon there. So in case you were wondering why the Hydreigon just came and left, a little bit of an adjustment there, but that's okay, I think, given where he's going. But yeah, just super solid play. Better team than last time. We've got a new Hector on our hands.
Yeah, so I actually ranked Hector in second. I feel like his games have been very, very good. The +0 into Gumi, can't even watch that game, so it was very hard to dissect. But he's been phenomenal. And the loss to Anthony, with it being a 0-2 -1, looks a little weird, but he got timed out in game 1, lost 1-0 in game 2. I just feel like his play has been phenomenal. There hasn't been a game where, he wasn't ever really out of the Anthony match. And then the Gumi one, like I said, it's really hard to dissect that one. So going with that, this is, like Matt said, a new Hector. The team's better. He's playing better. He's prepping better. The only drawback is you kind of know what Mons are coming. You just have to figure out how they are coming. You see the, Blastoise, Togekiss, Darmanitan, Comfey, Appleton, because he just picked up the Duraludon, so those are 0-0s. Only 6 Mons actually have stats other than the Pikachu. So you kind of know what Mons are going to be there, which could be kind of a prepping error more for him than his opponents, because his opponents are going to prep for those 6-7 Mons. But other than that, Crit Kiss went full burr into Burst, which was honestly kind of funny. And then it also did the same into Gumi to kind of save him that match. But I've liked what I've seen out of Hector, and I think it will continue. Hopefully not against me, because that is my opponent. So, Dan.
Yeah, Hector's had a pretty impressive season so far. Not much else to say about it. Each of his wins have been very solid. I have not attempted to watch the found footage that is the Hector Gumi match. I'm going to need that corrected by Maxwell at some point to make that watchable. But in all seriousness, every match that I have seen, he has played at a high level, and I expect that to continue. His team, I'm still not sure if I'm the biggest fan of it, but it's definitely grown on me this season, especially seeing the range that the Darmanitan can have. That thing still gives me some nightmares. But otherwise, I'd love to see the Krookodile come more, and I'd love to see the Frostlass come. But those are really small critiques at this point, and at this point, we're just splitting hairs to determine it to some extent.
Yeah, I will say Hector versus Anthony is actually one of my favorite sets of the season. It's one of the ones in Red Division that really sticks out in Blue Division that sticks in my head. I really liked that game a lot. Yeah, Hector's just killing it this season, man. I mean, last season it felt really weird because I was like, Hector is, I know, a really amazing player, and he had a solid season, but it wasn't like what I was expecting necessarily. And this season, shit, like he is bringing the heat. I mean, having the Gall turn 1 to click Belly Drum on your Darmanitan and run the Zen mode, I mean, that was a way to establish dominance. That was a way to say, new Hector this season, baby, I'm coming for blood. And he is coming for blood this season. I'm super excited for the rest of his season. I am very also looking forward to his replays. I think he's had some of the more fun games to watch this season, so by far.
That's also probably fair on Hector's end against me, because I remember our match last season. I just exploded Azelf against him game 1, so I feel like we're even now.
Yeah, kicking you back in the ass a little. I like it.
One last thing I'll say about Hector is that historically in regular VGC he's been very, very good, but he is much more of a pilot than a team builder. If you give him a solid team that was built by a competent team builder, and you tell him what it does, and you give him some calcs and stuff like that, he'll do fantastic with it. But his history as a team builder is much lighter than a lot of other draft players. So I think having had some experience in NBC before, having a building partner there, also having some experience last season in MDL, and kind of having critiqued maybe what he did wrong before, going through that kind of struggle, I think has helped him a lot. And I think he's I don't think he's exactly where his I don't think his team building yet is matches his level as a player, but it's getting there, and I think it's I would expect it to improve as we move forward this season.
For sure. Moving on. Anthony. I'll throw this one to Ryan.
Yeah, I get to do one. I haven't done one in a minute. All right. Anthony, 3-1, negatives. That should not be -7. Anyway,
He's +5.
okay, good. So we have his set with Charles, which we've talked about a bit at length. He has a 2-0 win on Hector, 0-2 loss to Tay, that's a little weird, and then a +6 2-0 win on Toxic. His transactions I really like. Cardio represent. I'm really sad I dropped it, but I like the linearity of that stuff. His team has been really good. He's gotten a lot of good team diversity and usage out of what he has. And I really like what I've seen from him. We haven't, an MDL weather is something that I've always felt is a little underrepresented, and I like how he's been using his sun mode from what I've seen. I've really loved the Diancie. That thing is putting in work a lot more than I would have expected it to. I've been really impressed with that. In general, I mean, Anthony's had I think his and Charles is one of the best sets of the season. Him and Hector was a great set, and he pulled the win. I actually was debating on whether I wanted to put Anthony or Hector in 3rd or 4th, respectively, personally, and I actually gave it to Anthony because of his 2-0 win over Hector to be 1 slot higher, since he won the literal tiebreaker. His loss to Tay was weird. Obviously, Tay got a crit, but Tay did win a real game, and it was ignoring the crit even. I mean, he did solid into him. So I'm mostly just calling that a kind of an off week. And then into Toxic, I mean, he crushed Toxic. That was a bit of a blowout game, honestly. So yeah, really, I think he's having a great season. He's starting strong, and I think he's going to keep it up. Super excited that he's playing this season. I've been trying to get him. I think that we've been trying to recruit him for a while. So I'm glad to see he's finally here.
Yeah, Dan, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, Anthony's had a really good season. A lot of sets that I've really enjoyed watching. Actually, his first 2 weeks are probably 2 of my 3 or 4 favorite sets to have seen so far this season. The most recent 2 have been less memorable than the first 2, but I expect him to put in at least a couple more really good ones. The only major drawback for Anthony is that he has that loss to Tay, which is the worst loss out of the top 4. And it's kind of inexplicable as well. This is to take nothing away from Tay, but the way Anthony had been playing going into that set, there was a reason he was a big favorite going into it, and he just sort of dropped it. And I don't know if that's going to be a trend that continues, just the occasional egg that gets laid amongst a bunch of gems, or if that's something that just needed to happen once and it's going to be out of his system. And I think the answer to that question is going to determine whether or not he's just, a solid playoff team or a title contender.
Yeah, I will say that match against Tay was definitely an off week for him for a variety of reasons. It was kind of just a lot of little things that came together to put that match in Tay's favor. That was, like we talked about, that was the 1 week where Tay was really bringing his A game. He prepped and played well. He ended up leading with the mode that Anthony was most concerned about. Anthony, even before the match, had said to me his prep that week was not the best. He hadn't really spent a lot of time working on the matchup. There was a little bit of RNG, only in 1 game, of course, not both. So could have been worse, of course. So yeah, that was there was a lot of stuff that kind of came together to award Tay the win there instead of Anthony, even though he was clearly the favorite between the 2. But yeah, I do think that's sort of an anomaly among other games that are more emblematic of what Anthony is like as a player, which makes sense because that was 1 game against 3 other very good ones that he's had so far.
Yeah, so Anthony, of course, super good player. The team, and it might be because Matt helped draft it, reminds me of Matt's championship team last year. A solid, really hard hitter at the top with a good supporting option in Riolu, a really phenomenal weather mode, and just good stuff in between with a decent, I wouldn't say the best, but a decent Trick Room mode. Dancy's base 50. But nothing about his play outside of the game against Tay says that he's going to ever drop down to like out of playoffs. So nothing bad really to say about Anthony. Tay played very well. Just like the Lakers, he got up to play someone who was very much so a favorite to win. So I don't think Anthony will drop anywhere near wild card. So nothing really bad to say. Again, just phenomenal player, and I think that's you guys covered everything. But we will move on to Dina, and I'm actually going to put Matt in the hot seat on this one. I know he doesn't like taking the lead for the red coaches, but he's going to do it here. So go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I've been following Dina's season closer than most red coaches. But yeah, she was obviously a very strong contender last season, and I think she's shown even more strength here in her prep and her team and
Matt,
her
real
play.
quick, are you building a house? What the hell?
Oh no, speaking of Anthony, no, that's him. We're trying to set up internet in our new house, and he's running some cords all over the place. I apologize for that. He's hammering some shit and drilling some holes, but I can't really do anything about that right now. I'll be quick. As we get into these top level teams, there's less to say anyway, because when a team is really good, you're like, yep, that was great. This move was awesome. This prep was good. When a team is bad, you can go more into detail about like how it's bad and why, and But with Dina, it's more just this team is terrifying. I think she's using her modes correctly. This is the first time we've seen Hatterene make a huge splash in MDL, mostly because we put that Gmax form down in Tier 2, which was a great pickup for her with the Melmetal. It's a major comfort pick for her, and the Trick Room mode on her team is absolutely terrifying, in addition to all this fast terrain stuff she has going on. It's a very scary team. She's using it well. She knows when to bring what modes. She's made some good transactions as well, while also maintaining the core modes of her team. Couple of we have yet to see those bottom tier Mons come into play yet, but I'm hoping they will soon, because there's some good stuff that I think come out of both the Pangoro and the Tauros. Butterfree ended up being a really good transaction. Helping to shore up that ground weakness, the Max Quake weakness in particular, and her only loss so far is against Dan, who is of course historically one of MDL's top players, and she really held her own, and in another world absolutely could have taken the match. So. She's had very strong performances every time. Team is good, prep is there. All good stuff. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, Dina's team is scary. She has a really good fast mode in the Thievel and the Coco, and then just the slow mode with the Hatterene and the Melmetal itself is really good. And then you top that off with support from Raichu, both taking advantage of Follow Me and just being super fast in that electric terrain. Or just, Psy spamming with the Indeedee. Mons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 all synergize with each other, and if those were the only 6 that were ever brought, I still think we're looking at the same record. Guzzlord and Vanillix were super good value for what her squad wants. And then other than that, just her play's been phenomenal. Her prep's been really good. I was the lowest on her just because I kind of wanted the games to be a little bit more cleaner. The crit Blizzard into AV Urshifu when it was going for a close combat into Vanillix kind of sucked. Hatterene doing Hatterene things with the confusion into Jess kind of sucked. A clean win into Razz, and then honestly I didn't really watch the Dan Dina game just because I've been so busy this week. But if her wins were cleaner, this would have been a clean second for me. I don't disagree that she's not second best, but overall, just phenomenal stuff. She'll obviously probably keep up the momentum and keep playing at a super high, phenomenal level. And just like Anthony, I don't doubt that she's probably already a playoff lock at this point. So, Dan, since you played her, we're gonna go to you last. So why don't Ryan go ahead?
Yeah, one thing you guys haven't talked about. First off, I rated Dina second, just so we're clear. Anyway, I think Dina's had a very strong season. I've liked all of her games quite a bit. I think her team is incredibly threatening, and probably, I think retrospectively, obviously hindsight 2020, I was debating between giving Dina 1 or 2 on PRs. I decided 2 on my own personal list. Should have given her 1. I think the team itself is good, and something you guys haven't talked about as much are her transactions, which I actually really like on paper. The Butterfree's the only one that we've really seen get that usage. And I think it's a great. I think the Butterfree for the War Turtle was genius. I absolutely support that. I actually really like the Tauros here, and I don't know why everyone thinks that she needs to run Frost Breath Anchor Point. I don't get it. Tauros is a great Intimidate mon with sheer force and good stats and a good speed stat. Like, it's one of the best tier 4s in my opinion. Like, it's not like a max mon, but you effectively get like a really, really budget mon that gives you actually notably a ghost immunity on a team that does have a little bit of some ghost type troubles here and there. So I really like the Tauros. And then I don't like Beartick very much, and Pangoro is amazing. We've seen Jess last season. I think it was last season. Was it last season or 2 seasons ago?
Both.
We've been doing this too long. Pangoro has slapped every time Jess has used it. It's done really, really great work for her, and I actually think it fits what her team is going for exceptionally well.
It fits her Melmetal team better than it fit mine.
Yeah, I really, really like the Pangoro pickup over the Beartick. Yeah, I think that the transactions are good. The games have been good. She's very commanding. I think that she's buying away the top in our division. Like, I think that everyone in our division is scared to play Dina. Like, it is gonna be pretty unanimous that if you ask any coach right now, who do you not want to play next? The answer is gonna be Dina. For those that haven't played her yet. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'll add in as well. She has been playing very, very impressively this season. Like you guys said, lost to me, there's no shame. I haven't lost a game 3 in MDL since season 2, so that just happens sometimes when you go to game 3. And to Jess. But, yeah. But our set, I know you didn't watch it, Maxwell, like, up there with the Hector Anthony set and the Anthony Charles sets in terms of entertainment value in watching it. So I would highly recommend it. I know we don't actually get to talk about it in a breakdown, so I'm just going to go into it a little bit because I think it's worth discussing when talking about Dina's placement. I was not ready for a speed swap onto Hatterene game 1, so she just 4-0'd me with Hatterene game 1. Game 2, she was not ready for a brutal swing to proc a Gorgeist, so Gorgeist went in again. Gorgeist has gone in twice with weakness policy this season, and it did it again. And then game 3, we had the exact same 4 with the exact same leads each of the games. Game 3, it just came down to she had room service Melmetal to underspeed everything on my team in Trick Room, but I had room service Steelix to underspeed her Melmetal in Trick Room, and that's really what it came down to. So we had really fun, really close sets. Zamazenta late game ended up huge into Melmetal both times, but Dina's absolutely a threat this season. I think she's going to continue to play well, and I would not be surprised to see her going pretty far in the playoffs in the Red Division. Matt,
did you have something else?
I just a little something since since Ryan was kind of gushing over Pangoro. I agree excuse me. I agree that it fits this Melmetal comp better than it did yours, Maxwell. It gives her an alternate dark type, and it also, in addition to her Trick Room mode, being a Fairy Dragon Steel Core, It is also now a psychic dark fighting core since she's got that fighting type in there. And Pangoro is not the slowest thing in the world, but I think she has enough slow stuff that's not really that big of a deal. And I think Pangoro is going to work beautifully with this mode, especially with the Hattery.
Yep, for sure. And moving on, the only undefeated coach, which is me, we'll throw it to Ryan.
Woo! Okay. This one's interesting. Maxwell is currently the only undefeated coach at plus 14. Good set with Noah. I got a 2-0 on Gumi, a 2-0 on Dark, and a 2-0 on Tay. So a lot of 2-0s. I like your transactions. I like the Tangela. I like the Purloin. I like the Komao. Yeah, you're just having a very dominant early season. That tends to be the case with you, though. It's been very rare in MDL where your early season isn't super strong. Or just your season in general tends to be pretty strong. I noticed that you don't tend to lose games until like mid-late season after
Season
you've
2
locked.
was bad. I started 0-4.
Oh yeah, I remember that. What a time. Anyway.
Wait, what?
Things are going pretty well for you. One thing that is notable that did get a little bit discussed is that your strength of schedule actually isn't as strong as some of the coaches that are before you on the 2-3-4. Noah and Gumi are your two highest profile wins, and Dark and Tay are the current two of the lowest rated coaches. So it's a little odd to judge because your games have been good, but there's a question of how you'll pair up against some of the other coaches in your division, the top ones, once you play them. So we're kind of waiting on that, but I think the top spot is more than merited and earned in this case. Your prep's been great. Team is performing extremely well. I really like what you've been doing with it. Electivire's been shockingly good, pun intended. And Mamoswine and Melmetal have gone in a big way. So those are my main thoughts. Everyone, the table's open.
I'll jump in here. I know season 2, you vocally said during the videos that you thought you should have been rank 1 power rankings after week 4, and season 3, you also said you should have been rank 1 power rankings after
Maybe it was season
week
1.
4.
I know I started real bad.
But season 2 you started 3-1, and season 3 you started 4-0, and both times you said you should have been rank 1 power rankings at this point in the season. So now we decided to give it to you here. I mean, there's arguments for other people. I'm kidding. Yeah, like you're having a really good season, obviously. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that you actually have the lowest opponent win percentage out of anyone in the league.
Yes.
So you do actually have the easiest schedule so far, but part of that is you played them, so that also has lowered their win percentage because they have to factor in the win against you. So it will even out throughout the season to some extent, but it's a bit less than what you've seen so far. But you have played 2 of the 1 and 3 coaches, and then you've also have wins against 2 and 2 coaches. But overall, just solid season, good diversity of mons. Would love to see Pelipepper do a bit more. I'm really excited to see Komoro, though. I think that's an underexplored mon and something that I'm looking forward to see what you do with it. Purloin's a great transaction as well, and I don't have too much to add here. I just think it's a solid season, getting the results that you should be getting to this point up through the season. But what do you say, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the good stuff, you guys kind of covered it already. It's just been solid games overall. And it's kind of to be expected for some of these since you played some of the lower ranked players, especially these last couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, the team's been performing great. Melmetal's fantastic. You're obviously much less afraid to use Mamoswine than I was. I agree with Dan. Definitely very, very excited to see the Komodo. I don't think anybody's drafted it in MDL, like maybe ever. So that ought to be really fun. Purloin is a great mon, despite how it's spelled on the sheet. Not much more to say other than I am looking forward to seeing how you and this team stack up against some of your next matchups, because I believe in the coming weeks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
it's
your
Hector
next
Anthony.
2 opponents, yes, your next 2 opponents are the other top teams in your division. So that will kind of be the test. And if you can get through that unscathed, then once we get to week 8 power rankings, it's very likely that you will be able to retain this spot. So looking forward to seeing how that goes.
So out of the 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 games I've played, Mamoswine has maxed 7 of them. Mamoswine's honestly been phenomenal. You know, ground and ice hits damn near everything. But surprisingly, my follow me user is also 6 and 6. My team opposing from Dina's team, my team is heavily built around Melmetal, with other options, of course, but everything that I've been using has been functioning the way I pictured it when I picked it up. Sadly, I haven't been able to use the Pelipper, but I really haven't needed to. There hasn't been any like super good fire types that I've came up against really at all, other than the Victini, which the Pelipper was on the team, just didn't hit the field. One thing that I will say, my week schedule, I think, benefits me more than just picking up wins. It also lets me experiment a little bit more. You know, I've used fast Melmetal. I've used a whole lot of offensive Mamoswine as well as Electivire. And I've been able to figure out, I guess, the more intricate details of my team, I think, faster than some of the other coaches whose schedule is a little bit harder, kind of having to play by the book. Other than that, like, I haven't dropped a game. Plus 14 in 4 weeks is really good. Finally getting that number 1 spot feels pretty good. Other than the Noah game, I've been performing very, very well. Kind of pooped game 2 away in that Noah game, but my team's performing like I thought it would, and there's nothing really else to say without completely gushing over what I've been doing. So I think I'm good. You know, we've been at this for 2 hours and 15 minutes, so any closing thoughts from you guys?
Head empty.
All right, Dan?
Nope. I had a very good beer throughout the course of this, so feeling good.
Matt?
There is one person in the power rankings ahead of you, ranked 0. That would be me.
Yeah, not on the slide. Sorry.
That is all.
We have enough California coaches right now. Stay the hell out of it. Scheduling with you guys sucks. I'm a teacher. Stay out of my division.
Kidding, of course. I've had to schedule with Aussies. Anyway.
Yeah, but anyway, hope you enjoyed. You know, if you're watching the whole thing and you got to this far, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Scrub to your sections. But
looking at you, Gumi.
Looking at you, Gumi, and Toxic.
And Razz.
But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Again, sorry for the lower coaches for shitting on you a bit. Hopefully, you know, it'll push your season, push you guys to do a little bit better. But that's just kind of the nature of these. We're not doing it because we don't like you. We're doing it to hopefully give you some good critiques and hopefully just make you guys better players. But without further ado, we will see you in the next one. Peace.